The mafia boss was cheating with his secretary. His pregnant wife left one ultrasound and vanished. I had been sitting in the parking lot for 47 minutes. The dashboard clock read 11:32 p.m. My husband's office light was still on, 14 floors up. I had told him I was staying late at my mother's house. I was not at my mother's house. I was in my car, in the dark, watching the window where his silhouette moved back and forth. And every few minutes, another silhouette joined his. Smaller, a woman, his secretary, the woman who had smiled at me at every company event for 3 years, the woman who had brought me tea during long meetings, the woman who had given me a baby blanket at my shower last month. My name is Sera Conti. I am 26 years old. I am 16 weeks pregnant with a daughter, and I have been watching my husband cheat on me for exactly 47 minutes. The ultrasound photograph is on the passenger seat. I brought it to show him tonight. I was going to tell him we were having a girl. Instead, I am watching his shadow merge with another woman's shadow through a 14th floor window. I want you to stop and think about that for a moment. Think about what it takes to sit in a dark parking lot for 47 minutes, watching the man you love embrace someone else through a window, while your unborn daughter kicks inside you. Think about the kind of strength it requires to not drive away, to not storm upstairs, to just sit there and let the truth wash over you until you are completely submerged in it. Before I go any further, I need you to do something for me, right now. Drop your city in the comments. Tell me where in the world you are watching from. Tell me what the weather is like outside your window. Tell me how you are doing today. Are you going through something right now? Are you rebuilding? Are you stronger than you were yesterday? Because this story is for you, every single word of it. This is the story of how I went from being the most humiliated pregnant wife to being the woman who vanished into thin air, who left a single ultrasound photograph on her husband's desk and disappeared so completely that the most powerful mafia boss in the Northeast spent 3 years searching for her and found absolutely nothing, who gave birth to a daughter alone in a town where nobody knew her name, who built a life and a home from nothing, and who, when Roman Conti finally found her, made him understand that some things cannot be fixed with money or power or apologies. Some things have to be earned. Now let me start from the night everything changed. The night I sat in that parking lot for 47 minutes and watched the life I had built turn to ash. I had suspected for months. That is the hardest part to admit. I had suspected and I had ignored it. Roman was working later than usual. He was more distracted. He was on his phone constantly, tilting the screen away from me when I walked into the room. His secretary, Alina, had started dressing differently, more professionally, more like she was trying to impress someone. I noticed all of these things. I filed them away in the back of my mind, and I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that Roman was just stressed, that the business was demanding, that Alina was just ambitious, that I was a pregnant woman with hormones making her see things that were not there. I was not being paranoid. I was being observant, and I had been observing the truth for months. I just was not ready to see it. The thing that finally made me see it was a receipt, a simple piece of paper that fell out of his jacket pocket when I was taking it to the dry cleaner. A receipt from a jewelry store. For a necklace. A very expensive necklace. A necklace I had never received. I did not confront him that night. I did not cry. I did not throw things. I went home and I started paying attention. Real attention. I tracked his schedule. I noted the discrepancies. I watched Alina more carefully. And I realized that every late night, every weekend trip, every emergency meeting corresponded with something. A pattern. A trail of lies that had been going on for at least a year. That night, The night I sat in the parking lot for 47 minutes was the night I decided to confirm what I already knew. I told him I was staying at my mother's house. I was not. I parked across the street from his office building and I waited. At 10:45 p.m., the light in his office went off, but neither of them came downstairs. At 11:15 p.m., the light went back on. At 11:32 p.m., I watched their shadows merge through the window. I sat there for 47 minutes, and then I did not drive home. I drove to our apartment instead. I packed a bag, enough for a few days. I left my wedding ring on his pillow, and I left the ultrasound photograph on his desk. Our daughter, 16 weeks, perfect profile. She had his nose. I did not leave a note. The photograph was the note. He would understand what it meant, or he would not. Either way, I was done. I drove to a town I had never heard of. A town small enough that the most powerful mafia boss in the Northeast would never think to look there. A town called Mercy Ridge. Population 2,800. Named after a church that had burned down 100 years ago. I had found it on a map at a rest stop. I pointed at it and decided that was where I was going to start over. And that is exactly what I did. I want to tell you about the drive. It took 5 hours. The whole way, I did not cry. I did not listen to music. I just drove with one hand on the wheel and the other on my belly, feeling my daughter kick. She was active that night. Maybe she knew something was wrong. Maybe she was telling me she was with me, that we were going to be okay. I thought about all the signs I had missed. The way Roman would end phone calls abruptly when I walked into the room. The way his secretary Alina would blush when I mentioned him. The way she always seemed to know his schedule better than I did. The way he stopped looking at me the way he used to. By the time I reached Mercy Ridge, the sun was coming up. I checked into a motel under my mother's maiden name and slept for 12 hours. When I woke up, my daughter was kicking, and I realized something. For the first time in 4 years, I did not have to pretend. I did not have to smile at company events or make small talk with a woman who was sleeping with my husband. I was free, the most terrifying and liberating feeling I had ever known. I was 16 weeks pregnant with $4,000 and a suitcase. And my daughter. That was everything I had in the world. And it was enough. It had to be enough. Because it was all I had left. Roman Conti had taken everything else. My trust. My marriage. My belief that people were fundamentally good. He had taken those things without even knowing he was doing it. Or maybe he knew. Maybe he just did not care. Either way, I was done letting him take anything else from me. My daughter and I were going to build a new life. Without him. Without his lies. Without the constant wondering and the sick feeling in my stomach every time his phone rang. We were going to be free, and nobody was ever going to make us feel trapped again. I made that promise to my daughter at 6 a.m. in a motel parking lot in a town I had found by pointing at a map. A promise made to a daughter who had not yet taken her first breath, but who already owned every beat of my heart. Mercy Ridge was the kind of town that existed because someone had built a church there 150 years ago, and people had simply never left. The church burned down in 1923. The town remained. I learned this from Gus, the motel owner, on my second day. He told me the entire history of Mercy Ridge while I was checking in for another week. He was 74 years old and had lived in Mercy Ridge his entire life, except for a brief period in the 1970s when he had moved to Nashville to become a musician. That had not worked out. He came back in 1978 and had been running the Mercy Inn ever since. The motel was a U-shaped building with 12 rooms and a neon sign where the letter R flickered intermittently. The rooms were clean but dated. The carpet was the color of burnt orange. The bedspreads had flowers on them that may have been fashionable in 1983. The shower took exactly 4 minutes to get warm, and then stayed warm for exactly 3 minutes before turning cold again. I learned to take very efficient showers. Gus did not ask questions about why a pregnant woman with no wedding ring and out-of-state plates was checking into his motel alone. He just handed me the key and told me checkout was at 11, and if I needed anything, he was in room 1 at the end. He also told me that the best coffee in town was at the Sunrise Cafe across the street, and that I should avoid the diner on Oak Street because the owner had been feuding with his supplier and the food had gone downhill. This was the kind of information that only mattered in a town of 2,800 people. I appreciated it more than he knew. I stayed at the motel for 2 weeks. Every morning I walked across the street to the Sunrise Cafe. It was a small diner with a counter and 6 booths and a jukebox in the corner that still played actual vinyl records. The owner was a woman named Mabel. She was somewhere in her early 70s, with silver hair pinned up in a bun and glasses that hung from a chain around her neck, and an apron that had been washed so many times the pattern was barely visible. She had inherited the cafe from her father, who had inherited it from his father. The original Sunrise Cafe had opened in 1924, a year after the church burned down. The town had needed a new place to gather. The cafe had been that place ever since. Mabel made the coffee herself every morning. It was strong enough to strip paint. She served it in thick ceramic mugs that did not match. She said matching mugs were for people who cared too much about what other people thought. She did not care what other people thought. She had been running the cafe for 40 years and had outlasted 3 mayors and 2 sheriffs, and an attempt by a fast food chain to open a franchise on the edge of town. She had personally called the corporate office and told them that Mercy Ridge did not need their microwaved hamburgers. The franchise never opened. On my 3rd morning at the cafe, Mabel sat down across from me with her own cup of coffee. The breakfast rush had ended, and the cafe was empty except for an old man in the corner booth who was reading a newspaper from 3 days ago. "You have been here every morning for 3 days," Mabel said. "You order the same thing, pancakes and black coffee. You do not complain about the pancakes even though they are objectively not very good. The recipe is from my grandmother, and I refuse to change it out of spite. You tip well. You do not talk to anyone. You look like you are running from something." I stared at her. I did not know what to say. "I am not going to ask what it is," she continued. "That is your business. But I am going to tell you something. Mercy Ridge has a way of collecting people who need to start over. Gus over at the motel came back here after Nashville did not work out. He has been running that motel for 45 years. Sheriff Diane moved here from the city after a case went wrong and she needed to disappear for a while. Old man Wheeler over in the corner, the one reading the newspaper from Tuesday even though it is Friday, he fought in a war he never talks about and came here afterward because it was the quietest place he could find. Everyone in this town is running from something or starting over from something. You are not special." She took a sip of her coffee. "What I am saying is, you can stay here. You can build a life here. Nobody will ask questions. That is the town policy. We do not ask questions. We just help." I felt tears forming in my eyes. I had not cried since the night I left. I had been holding everything inside, staying strong for my daughter. But Mabel kindness broke through something in me that I had been keeping locked up tight. "I do not have anywhere else to go," I said quietly. "Then you are in the right place," Mabel said. She reached across the table and patted my hand. Her fingers were rough from years of washing dishes and flipping pancakes. It was the most comforting touch I had ever felt. "Now, do you need a job?" I nodded. "Good," she said, "because my morning waitress just quit to move to Florida with a man she met on the internet." I told her it was a bad idea. She did not listen. "So I need someone to start tomorrow at 5 a.m. The pay is not great and the customers can be demanding, and my knees are not what they used to be, so you will be doing most of the heavy lifting. Are you interested?" "Yes," I said. "I am interested." "Good," Mabel said again. She stood up. "Be here at 5. Wear comfortable shoes. And stop ordering the pancakes. They are terrible. Get the French toast instead. My grandmother may have been terrible at pancakes, but her French toast recipe is excellent. It is the one thing I changed." I started the next morning at 5 a.m. The first week was brutal. I was 17 weeks pregnant. My feet swelled, my back ached. Every shift felt like running a marathon. But Mabel was patient in her own gruff way. She did not praise me when I did something right. She just grunted and moved on. But when I did something wrong, which was often, she corrected me without making me feel stupid. She had been teaching new waitresses for 40 years. She knew that shaming people did not help them learn. I learned the rhythm of the Sunrise Cafe. The breakfast rush started at 6 and lasted until 8. The lunch crowd was smaller but more demanding. The afternoon was quiet except for the high school kids who came in after school on Fridays. They were loud and messy and terrible tippers, but Mabel loved them anyway. She said they reminded her of being young. She said being young was the hardest thing anyone ever did, and the least we could do was give them a place to be loud and messy without judgment. I learned the regulars. Old Man Wheeler came in every morning at 6:15. He always ordered black coffee and scrambled eggs soft. He always sat in the corner booth. He always read a newspaper that was at least 2 days old. He never spoke unless spoken to. I asked Mabel about him once. She said he had been coming to the cafe every morning for 30 years, and in all that time she had learned exactly 3 things about him. His name was Harold Wheeler. He had served in the military, and he had lost someone he loved a long time ago. That was all anyone knew. That was all anyone needed to know. Sheriff Diane came in every Tuesday for lunch. She always ordered the club sandwich and iced tea. She always tipped 25%. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and a handshake that could crack walnuts. She had been sheriff for 16 years and had been re-elected 4 times without opposition. Mabel said that was because nobody else wanted the job. I suspected it was because everyone respected her too much to run against her. Gus from the motel came in every evening for dinner. He always ordered whatever the special was. He never complained even when the special was objectively questionable. He said he had eaten worse things in Nashville in the 70s, and nothing could compare to that. On my days off, I explored the town. Mercy Ridge had a library that was open 3 days a week and run by a woman named Patricia, who was approximately 90 years old and could locate any book in the building by memory. It had a park with a single swing set and a slide that had been installed during the Nixon administration. It had a grocery store, a hardware store, and a post office that shared a building with the library. It had exactly 1 traffic light, which had been installed in 1998 after a town meeting that Mabel described as the most contentious event in Mercy Ridge history. I found an apartment above the grocery store 3 weeks after I arrived. The owner was a man named Frank, who also owned the hardware store and the building next to it. He was 68 years old and had been buying property in Mercy Ridge for 40 years. The apartment above the grocery store had been vacant for 2 years. It was small, 1 bedroom, a kitchen with a stove that only worked if you turned the knob exactly 37 degrees to the left, a bathroom with a shower that alternated between freezing and scalding with no middle ground, a living room window that looked out over Main Street. Frank wanted $350 a month including utilities. I told him that was not enough. He said it had been empty for 2 years and he was not losing money. He was gaining a tenant. Take it or leave it. I took it. I moved in the next day with everything I owned, a suitcase of clothes, an ultrasound photograph of my daughter at 16 weeks, and $3,200 remaining from my savings. I decorated with things I found at the thrift store, a vase for wildflowers I picked from the field behind the hardware store, a framed print of a lighthouse, a rocking chair I found at a yard sale for $10. Every night I sat in that chair by the window and talked to my daughter. I told her about Mabel and the cafe and the town. I told her about the pancakes that were terrible, but the French toast that was excellent. I told her she was loved and wanted, and that I would spend the rest of my life making sure she never felt the kind of pain her father had caused. I did not tell her about Roman. Not yet. That story would come later, when she was old enough to understand, when I was strong enough to tell it without breaking. My daughter was due in November. The autumn in Mercy Ridge was beautiful. The leaves turned gold and red and orange. The air got crisp. The town prepared for its annual harvest festival, which Mabel told me was the biggest event of the year. There was a parade and a pie contest and a dance in the town square. Everyone participated. Old Man Wheeler won the pie contest every year, which was surprising given that nobody had ever seen him bake anything. Mabel said it was one of the great mysteries of Mercy Ridge. I entered my mother's strawberry jam in the preserves category. It won second place. Mabel said the only reason it did not win first was because the judge was biased toward the woman who had been winning for 15 years. I did not care. Second place felt like a victory. It felt like proof that I could build something real here, that I was not just surviving, I was becoming part of something. Lucia was born on a Thursday in November. I went into labor during the dinner rush. Mabel drove me to the county hospital 40 miles away in her ancient pickup truck that smelled like coffee grounds and old newspapers. The labor was 9 hours. At 4:22 a.m., my daughter arrived. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. A full head of dark hair that curled at the ends. A cry that could wake the dead. The most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I named her Lucia. It was my mother's middle name. It meant light, and she was the light. The reason I had kept going when everything felt impossible. On the birth certificate, under father, I left the line blank. I stared at that line for a long time. Roman Conti had never been a father to this child. He had been with his secretary while I was carrying her. He did not deserve that line. I lifted the pen. The line stayed blank. Mabel was in the waiting room. She had been there all 9 hours. She held Lucia for the first time, and her eyes filled with tears. "She is perfect," she said. "She looks just like you." "She looks like her father," I said quietly. Mabel looked at me. "No," she said. "She looks like you." And that is all anyone in Mercy Ridge will ever need to know. I started my business when Lucia turned 1. Mabel let me use the cafe kitchen after hours. I started making jam from my mother's recipe. Strawberries, sugar, lemon juice, thyme. The secret was the stirring, slow and steady. My mother used to say that jam taught you patience. You could not hurry it. You just had to trust the process. I called the business Lucia Kitchen. I sold the jars at the grocery store and at a farmer's market in the next town. Within a year, I was supplying 3 cafes in the county. Mabel was my first customer. She put my strawberry jam on every table in the Sunrise Cafe and told everyone it was made by a local entrepreneur. She did not mention that the entrepreneur was also her waitress. That was our secret. I was not rich. I would never be rich the way I had been as Roman Conti wife. But I did not need to be. I paid my rent. I fed my daughter. I saved a little each month. And every night I sat by the window of my apartment above the grocery store, watching Lucia sleep, and felt something I had not felt in years. Peace. Real peace. The kind that came from knowing every single thing I had was something I had earned myself. I had built this life from nothing. Every jar of jam, every dollar in my savings, every smile from my daughter, it was all mine, and nobody could take it from me. Lucia turned 2 before I even realized how much time had passed. She was walking now, running actually. She never went anywhere slowly. She talked in fragments that were slowly becoming sentences. She called me Mama, and she called Mabel Maymay, and she called Gus from the motel Gummy, for reasons nobody understood. She was curious about everything. Why was the sky blue? Where did the sun go at night? Why did birds sing? I did not have answers to most of her questions. I just made them up. She accepted my made-up answers with the complete trust of a 2-year-old who believed her mother knew everything. I hoped she would never stop believing that. The business was growing. Lucia Kitchen was now in 3 cafes across the county. I had hired a part-time helper, a high school student named Tess who wanted to be a chef someday. She came in on weekends to help with production. She was 17 years old and full of energy, and asked approximately 40 questions per hour. She reminded me of myself at that age. Before Roman. Before everything. Mabel was still my biggest supporter. She had added my blackberry jam to the menu alongside the strawberry. She told everyone who came into the cafe that I was a local success story. She never mentioned where I had come from or what I had been running from. That was not her story to tell. She understood that. Gus from the motel had become like an uncle to Lucia. He brought her candy every time he saw her, which Mabel said was going to rot her teeth. Gus said that was what uncles were for. He had never had children of his own. His brief marriage in the 1970s had ended before it really began. He did not talk about it much, but I could see the way his face lit up when Lucia ran toward him across the street, yelling Gummy at the top of her lungs. She filled a space in his life that he had not known was empty. Sheriff Diane stopped by the cafe more often now, not just on Tuesdays. She said she liked to check in on the town business owners. I suspected she was checking in on me specifically. She had run background checks on everyone who moved to Mercy Ridge under suspicious circumstances. It was part of her job. I did not know if she had run one on me. I did not ask. If she had, she never mentioned it. That was the Mercy Ridge way. Old Man Wheeler still came in every morning at 6:15. He still ordered black coffee and scrambled eggs soft. He still read a newspaper that was at least 2 days old. But now, when Lucia came into the cafe with me on weekends, he would look up from his paper and watch her with something that might have been a smile. He never spoke to her directly, but one morning I found a small stuffed rabbit on the counter with a note that said, "For the little one." The handwriting was shaky. I knew it was from him. I never mentioned it. That was the Mercy Ridge way too. The piece ended on a Tuesday in September. I was at the farmer's market in the next town over, setting up my booth. Tess was with me, arranging jars on the display table. The morning was cool and crisp, the first hint of autumn in the air. Business had been good. We had sold out of the strawberry jam and were almost out of the blackberry. I was bent over a crate of jars when I heard a voice behind me. Mrs. Conti. I knew that voice. I had never heard it before, but I knew what it meant. The formal address, the careful tone, the slight hesitation that came from delivering a message that was going to change everything. I straightened up slowly and turned around. Standing in front of my booth was a man in a dark suit. He was tall and serious, and he moved with the kind of precision that came from years of following orders. He was not from Mercy Ridge. Nobody in Mercy Ridge wore suits. "My name is Victor," he said quietly. "I work for your husband. He has been looking for you for 3 years. He sent me to find you." The farmer's market seemed to go quiet around us. I was aware of Tess staring at me with wide eyes. I set down the jar I was holding. My hands were steady. I was proud of that. "How did you find me?" I asked. "Your jam," he said. Lucia Kitchen. The label had your mother's maiden name on it. Bianchi. Someone in our organization recognized it, traced it back to you. Of course. My mother name. The name I had taken as my own. The name I had used to build my business. It had been my shield and my camouflage for 3 years, and now it had led him straight to me. You can tell Roman, I said, that I am not his wife anymore. I am not Sera Conti. I am Sera Bianchi, and I am not coming back. Tell him that. Tell him to leave us alone. Victor looked at me for a long moment. He was studying my face, my posture, my hands with no ring. He seemed to be weighing something in his mind. He is different now, Victor said quietly. I have worked for him for 12 years. I have never seen him like this. He sold the company. He has been in therapy. He fired Alina the night you left. I was the one who escorted her out of the building. She was crying. He was not. I did not respond. I did not know what to say. He asked me to find you, Victor continued. He did not ask me to bring you back. He just wanted to know you were alive, that the baby was alive, that you were okay. He has been searching for 3 years. He has spent millions. He has called in every favor, and he never gave up, not once. Victor reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He placed it on the corner of my display table. This is his number, he said. He asked me to give it to you. He said to tell you that he is not the same man who hurt you. He said he knows he has no right to ask for anything, but if you ever want to talk, he will answer. Victor stepped back. He looked at me one more time. For what it is worth, he said, I think he means it. I have worked for a lot of powerful men. Most of them never change. They just get better at hiding who they are. But he is different. I think he has actually changed. I would not say that if I did not believe it. He turned and walked away through the farmer's market. I watched him go. My heart was pounding. My hands were still steady, but something had shifted inside me, something I was not ready to name. I did not call the number, not for 3 weeks. I kept the paper folded in my wallet. I looked at it every night. I never dialed. I was not ready, but I was also not able to throw it away. That told me something I was not ready to admit. Roman arrived 4 days after Victor's visit. He did not send anyone else. He came himself. I was behind the counter at the Sunrise Cafe, refilling coffee, when the door opened and the entire room went quiet. Not because anyone recognized him, because Roman Conti had the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet. He was tall and dark-haired and handsome in a way that was almost aggressive. But he looked different than I remembered. Older, tired. His suit was expensive, but his eyes were hollow. He had the look of a man who had not slept well in 3 years. He looked around the room, and his eyes found me immediately. Sera, he said. His voice cracked on my name. Mabel looked at me. Do you want me to call the sheriff? I shook my head. I will handle this. I walked out from behind the counter. I did not invite him to sit. I crossed my arms and waited. You found me, I said. Congratulations. What do you want? He looked at me, at my apron with the coffee stains, at my hair pulled back in a ponytail, at my hands with no ring. I want to meet my daughter, he said. I know about her. Victor told me. Lucia. She is 2 years old. I have missed 2 years of her life. I want to meet her. You do not get to want things from me, I said. My voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. You lost that right when you chose your secretary over your wife. When you made me sit in a parking lot for 47 minutes watching your shadows merge through a window while your daughter kicked inside me. You do not get to walk in here and demand anything. His jaw tightened. I am not demanding. I am asking. I know I have no right. I know I destroyed everything. I have spent 3 years trying to figure out how to find you, how to tell you I was wrong, how to become someone worth finding. I studied his face. There were lines around his eyes that had not been there before, gray in his hair that was new. He looked like a man who had been running for 3 years and had finally stopped. "Alina is gone," he said. "I ended it the night you left. I fired her the next morning. I have not been with anyone since. I sold the company. I have been in therapy for 2 years. I am not the same man who hurt you. I am not asking for your forgiveness. I am not asking to be part of your life. I am asking for a chance to prove that I have changed, to prove that I can be someone worth knowing, for Lucia's sake, not for mine." I thought about all the nights I had lain awake wondering where he was and who he was with. I thought about the birth of my daughter, alone in a hospital room with only Mabel holding my hand. I thought about every jar of jam I had made and every dollar I had saved. I had done all of it without him. I did not need him. I had proven that to myself 1,000 times. But Lucia deserved to know her father, not the man who had betrayed me, the man he was now, the man he was trying to become, if that man was real. "You want a chance," I said. "You earn it. You stay in Mercy Ridge. You find a job. You go to therapy. You show up every single day, and you do not push, and you do not demand. And maybe, someday, I will let you meet your daughter." He nodded. "Whatever you want, whatever it takes, I will do it." He found an apartment above the hardware store that same week. Frank, the landlord, said he seemed quiet but polite. Frank did not know that his new tenant had once been the most powerful mafia boss in the Northeast. He got a job at the grocery store stocking shelves. The manager, a woman named Karen who had been working there for 20 years, said he was the best stocker she had ever hired. She did not know that he used to have people who stocked shelves for him. He went to therapy twice a week, driving an hour each way to the nearest town with a counselor. He showed up at the Sunrise Cafe every morning at 6:15, sat in the corner booth across from Old Man Wheeler, and watched me work without saying a word. Old Man Wheeler never acknowledged him. Roman never tried to make conversation. They just sat in their respective corners, 2 men who had seen things they did not talk about, drinking coffee in silence. He never pushed. He never demanded. He never tried to rush me. He just showed up, every single day. Mabel was the first to soften toward him. One morning she brought him his coffee and said, "You have been coming here every day for 3 months. You tip 30%. You never complain about the food. You never bother Sera. What is your angle?" "No angle," Roman said. "I am just trying to be present." Mabel studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once and walked away. That was the closest thing to approval Mabel had ever given anyone. Old Man Wheeler surprised me. One morning I saw him slide his newspaper across the table toward Roman. Roman looked at it, looked at him. Old Man Wheeler said nothing. Roman read the paper in silence. After that, it became a routine. Every morning, Old Man Wheeler would finish his paper and slide it across to Roman. Neither of them ever spoke. It was the strangest friendship I had ever witnessed. It took 6 months before I let Roman meet Lucia. We met in the park behind the grocery store. Mabel came with me. Roman knelt down on the grass at Lucia's eye level. She studied him with the intense curiosity of a 2-year-old trying to figure out if this stranger was worth her time. "This is Roman," I said. "He is a friend of Mama." Lucia tilted her head. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she held out her stuffed cat. "This is Muffin," she said. "Do not pull her tail." Roman took the cat with both hands. His voice was shaking. "I will not pull her tail," he said. "I promise." And that is how Roman Conti met his daughter. Through a stuffed cat named Muffin. In a park in a town of 2,800 people, where nobody knew he had once commanded an empire. He was just a man in jeans and a sweater, kneeling on the grass, promising a 2-year-old that he would not pull her cat's tail. It was the most honest I had ever seen him. He kept showing up after that. He came to Lucia's birthday parties and her daycare graduation and her first dance recital, where she forgot every single step and just spun in circles for 3 minutes. He was there for all of it, not because he was trying to win me back, because he wanted to be there for her. He was learning who she was. Her favorite color was purple this week, but last week it had been orange, and the week before that it had been sparkly, which was not technically a color, but Lucia insisted it counted. She loved dinosaurs and princesses and bugs, all equally. She could already count to 50 and was working on 100. She believed that Muffin the cat had secret adventures at night while she was sleeping. Roman listened to all of these things with the complete attention of a man receiving intelligence critical to national security. He never interrupted. He never corrected her. He just listened. And slowly, over the course of that first year, I began to see someone different when I looked at him. Not the man who had betrayed me, the man he was becoming. Patient, humble, present. The father Lucia deserved. The partner I had always wanted him to be. It was not a fairy tale. There were still hard days when I would look at him and remember the parking lot and the 47 minutes and the shadows merging through the window. On those days I would go quiet, and he would recognize it and give me space. He never pushed, he never demanded, he just waited. And eventually the hard days became less frequent. Not gone. They would never be fully gone. Some wounds scar over, but the scar tissue is always there. But the good days started outnumbering the hard ones. And that felt like progress. Lucia was the one who made the final decision. On her 4th birthday, she asked if Roman could sit next to her at the party. Not across the room, not in the corner, next to her, at her table, with her cake and her candles, and her stuffed cat that was looking increasingly worse for wear but was still very much loved. I said yes. Roman sat next to his daughter at her birthday party, and when she blew out the candles, she turned to him and said, "Did you make a wish too, Roman?" He said yes. She asked what he wished for. He said he wished for another year of being able to sit next to her. She nodded approvingly. "Good wish," she said. "Good wish indeed." Roman found an apartment above the hardware store within the first week. Frank, who owned both buildings, said he was quiet and paid his rent on time and never caused any problems. Frank had been a landlord for 40 years, and those were the only 3 qualities that mattered. He did not care that Roman had once been the most powerful mafia boss in the Northeast. He did not even know. To Frank, Roman was just the new guy from out of town who stocked shelves at the grocery store and kept to himself. The apartment was small, 1 bedroom, a kitchen with cabinets that did not close properly, a bathroom with a shower that had exactly 1 temperature, and that temperature was lukewarm. Roman did not complain. He had lived in luxury for 20 years and it had not made him happy. Maybe simplicity would. He got a job at the grocery store the same week. Karen, the manager, hired him on the spot. She said he seemed reliable. She had been managing that store for 20 years and had developed an instinct for who would show up and who would not. Roman showed up. Every shift, every day. He stocked shelves and mopped floors and carried groceries to customers' cars. He did all of it without complaint. The man who used to have people for everything now had nothing except his own 2 hands, and the determination to prove he had changed. He went to therapy twice a week. The nearest therapist was in a town called Ashton, an hour away. Roman drove there and back every Tuesday and Thursday. He sat in a room with a woman named Dr. Patel and talked about his childhood and his father and all the things he had never said out loud to anyone. He talked about Alina and what had made him vulnerable to her attention. He talked about me and what he had destroyed. He talked about Lucia and what he hoped to become. I did not ask about his sessions. That was private. But I could see the changes. The way he responded to things was different now. He used to react to frustration with anger. Now he paused, took a breath, thought before he spoke. It was a small change, but it was real. Every morning at 6:15, Roman walked into the Sunrise Cafe and sat in the corner booth. The same booth. Every single day. He ordered black coffee. He did not speak unless spoken to. He watched me work without staring. He never tried to approach me or start a conversation. He just showed up. Old man Wheeler sat in the opposite corner. He had been sitting in that booth every morning for 30 years. The two of them existed in parallel silence. Two men who had seen things they did not talk about, drinking coffee and watching the world go by. One morning, without a word, Old man Wheeler slid his newspaper across the gap between their booths. Roman looked at it, looked at him. Old man Wheeler said nothing. Roman read the paper in silence. After that, it became a routine. Every morning, Old man Wheeler would finish his paper and slide it across to Roman. Neither of them ever spoke. It was the strangest friendship I had ever witnessed. Mabel was the one who surprised me most. She had been protective of me since the day I walked into her cafe. She had seen the damage Roman had done, even if she did not know the details. For the first 2 months, she refused to serve him. She made me do it. She said she was not going to give that man the satisfaction of her coffee. But somewhere around month 3, something shifted. One morning she walked over to his booth with the coffee pot herself. She set down his mug and looked at him with those sharp old eyes. "You have been coming here every day for 3 months," she said. "You tip 30%. You never complain about the French toast even when it is slightly burned. You never bother Sera. What is your angle?" "No angle," Roman said. "I am just trying to be present." Mabel studied him for a long moment. She had been reading people for 50 years. She could tell when someone was lying. She nodded once and walked away. The next week, there was a new coffee mug at his booth. It said "World Okayest Dad" on the side. Mabel claimed she found it at a thrift store. I did not believe her. Lucia was the one who noticed him first. She was 2.5 years old and she did not miss anything. One morning she pointed at Roman across the cafe and asked, "Who is that man?" I told her he was a friend. She accepted this without question. A few weeks later she pointed again. "Why does that man always look sad?" I did not have an answer for that. Roman noticed her noticing him. I could see it in his eyes every time she walked into the cafe. The way he would stop mid-sip and just watch her. Not in a creepy way. In the way of a man who was seeing his daughter for the first time every single day and trying to memorize every detail. The way she walked. The way she talked to Muffin the cat. The way she insisted on stirring her own hot chocolate even though most of it ended up on the table. On Lucia's 3rd birthday, Roman gave her a gift. He had asked my permission first. I said yes, as long as it was not expensive. He gave her a book about space because Mabel had mentioned that Lucia was obsessed with the moon. Lucia opened the gift with the kind of intensity she brought to everything. She studied the cover. She flipped through the pages. Then she looked up at Roman, who was standing at a respectful distance. "Thank you," she said. "Do you want to read it with me?" Roman looked at me. I nodded. He sat down on the floor of the cafe, his expensive suit getting covered in cupcake frosting from a previous incident, and read a book about the moon to his daughter for the first time. His voice cracked on every other page. Lucia did not seem to notice. She was too busy pointing at pictures of craters and asking why the moon had holes in it. That was the day I started to believe he had actually changed. The formal meeting happened a week later. I told Roman he could join us at the park on Saturday, just for an hour. He arrived 20 minutes early. He was wearing jeans and a plain sweater. No suit, no watch. Nothing that suggested wealth or power. Just a man who was terrified and trying not to show it. Lucia was on the swings when he walked up. She saw him and immediately stopped swinging. She remembered him from the cafe. "From the book about the moon. You came back," she said. It was not a question. It was an observation. "I said I would," Roman replied. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands trembling at his sides. Lucia nodded. She seemed to find this acceptable. She pointed at the swing next to her. "You can swing too, but you have to pump your legs. Mama gets tired when she pushes me for too long." Roman sat on the swing next to his daughter. He pumped his legs awkwardly. He had probably not been on a swing in 35 years. Lucia watched him with the critical eye of a 3-year-old evaluating performance. "You are not very good at this," she said. "No," Roman agreed. "I am not, but I am trying." Lucia considered this. "Trying is good," she said finally. "That is what Mama always tells me. Trying is the most important part." She had no idea how much those words meant to him. She was just repeating something I had told her 100 times. But I saw Roman's face when she said it. Something cracked open behind his eyes. Something that had been sealed shut for a very long time. Over the next year, Roman became a fixture in our lives. Not a central one, not yet, but a fixture. He came to the park every Saturday. He came to Lucia's dance recital, where she forgot every step and just spun in circles for the entire performance. He came to her preschool graduation, where she announced to everyone that she wanted to be an astronaut princess when she grew up. He was there for all of it. Never in the front row, never demanding attention, just present, consistent, reliable. He learned who Lucia was as a person. Her favorite color changed weekly. Currently it was sparkly, which was not technically a color, but Lucia insisted it counted. She loved dinosaurs and princesses and bugs. She could count to 100 and was working on 1,000. She believed that Muffin the cat had secret adventures at night. Roman listened to all of these revelations with the complete attention of a man receiving critical intelligence. Sheriff Diane stopped me one afternoon. She had been watching Roman for a year. She had run his background. She knew about his past. She wanted me to know that she was aware, and that she was watching, and that if he ever did anything to hurt me or Lucia, she would personally make sure he never saw daylight again. That was not a threat, she said. It was a promise. The town accepted him in their own way. Frank said he was the best tenant ever. Karen said he was the hardest worker. Old Man Wheeler still shared his newspaper. Mabel still served him coffee in the world okayest dad mug. She had never admitted it was not from a thrift store. On Lucia's 4th birthday, everything shifted. She had requested a princess party. Mabel transformed the cafe into a castle. There was a cake shaped like a turret. There were streamers and balloons. Gus had spent 3 weeks building a throne out of cardboard and aluminum foil. The whole town came. Roman was there, in his usual spot near the back. But when Lucia saw him, she marched across the room, grabbed his hand, and pulled him toward the table. "You have to sit next to me," she commanded. "You are my guest." He looked at me. I nodded. He sat next to his daughter at her birthday party for the first time. When she blew out the candles, she turned to him. "Did you make a wish too?" "Yes," he said. "What did you wish for?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I wished for another year of being able to sit next to you, and the year after that, and the year after that." Lucia considered this with the gravity of a 4-year-old making an important decision. "Good wish," she said. "Good wish indeed." That night, after Lucia was asleep and the guests were gone, Roman and I sat on the steps outside my apartment. The stars were out. The town was silent. You earned it, I said. Not because of who you were, because of who you have become. You showed up. You did the work. You changed. I see that now. He did not say anything. His eyes were wet. I am not ready to be married to you again. I do not know if I ever will be, but I am ready to try. One day at a time. He nodded. One day at a time. I can do that. For as long as it takes. We sat there holding hands for the first time in 4 years. The traffic lights cycled from red to green and back. The crickets sang. The moon rose. It was not a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. Roman told me about one of his therapy sessions a few months into his time in Mercy Ridge. He had never shared details before. I had never asked. But one evening he sat down across from me at the cafe after closing and said he needed to tell me something. Dr. Patel asked me to write a letter to you, he said. A letter I would never send. Just for myself. To put into words everything I could never say out loud. What did you write? I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. I wrote that I do not recognize the man I used to be. That when I think about what I did, it feels like remembering someone else's life. A stranger who wore my face and spoke with my voice, and destroyed the only good thing he ever had. I wrote that I am terrified I will never be able to make it right. That you will never see me as anything other than the man who hurt you. That Lucia will grow up and one day someone will tell her who I used to be and she will hate me for it. He stopped. His hands were shaking. I wrote that even if none of that changes, I will keep showing up. I will keep stocking shelves and going to therapy and sitting in that corner booth every morning. Not because I expect anything. Because it is the right thing to do. Because it is the only thing I can do. Because being present is the only way I know how to prove I have changed. I did not know what to say, so I just reached across the table and put my hand on his. We sat like that in silence. The cafe was dark except for the light over the counter. The town was quiet. It was enough. Alina tried to contact him 8 months into his time in Mercy Ridge. She sent a letter to the grocery store. Roman did not open it. He brought it to me, still sealed, and placed it on the counter of the cafe. This arrived today, he said. I have not read it. I wanted you to know. I looked at the envelope. Her handwriting was neat and precise. The return address was in a city 3 states away. What do you think it says? I asked. He shook his head. I do not care what it says. Whatever she wants, whatever explanation or apology she is offering, it does not matter. She is part of my past. You and Lucia are my present. I do not want anything from her. He took the letter and tore it in half without opening it. Then he tore it again. He dropped the pieces into the trash can behind the counter. I watched him do it. I did not say anything, but something shifted in me that day. He had chosen, not with words, with action. He had chosen us over her without hesitation. It was not a grand gesture. It was just a torn envelope in a diner trash can. But it meant more than any diamond or promise ever could. There were still hard days. Days when I would look at Roman and suddenly remember the parking lot and the 47 minutes and the shadows merging through the window. On those days, I could not look at him. I could not speak to him. I would go quiet and cold and he would recognize it immediately. He never tried to fix it. He never tried to explain again or apologize again. He would just say, I understand. Take the time you need. I will be here when you are ready. And he would be. Every time. That was the thing that finally convinced me. Not the words, the consistency, the patience, the willingness to wait without demanding anything in return. The man I had married would never have done that. The man I had married would have demanded, threatened, used his power to force my hand. This man just waited. Every single time. Mabel sat down across from me one evening. about a year after Roman arrived. She had been watching the whole time. She had been watching me watch him. "I have seen a lot of marriages in this cafe," she said. "Good ones and bad ones, and ones that should have ended years before they did. I have seen couples who stay together out of habit, and couples who stay together out of spite. I have seen exactly 3 couples in 50 years who genuinely rebuilt something from the ashes. You and Roman are one of them." "How do you know?" I asked. "Because I can see it," she said. "The way he looks at you. The way you look at him when you think nobody is watching. The way Lucia runs to him now when she walks through the door. That is not forced. That is not pretend. That is real. I have been reading people for half a century, Sera. I know the difference." She stood up and went back to the kitchen before I could respond. Mabel was like that. She said what she needed to say and then left before things got uncomfortable. Lucia asked about Roman's past one afternoon while we were walking home from the park. She was 4.5 years old, and she had been thinking about something for a while. "Mama," she said, "was Roman here when I was a baby?" "No," I said. "He was not." "Why not?" I stopped walking. I knelt down so I was at her eye level. This was a conversation I had been preparing for. I had not expected it to come so soon. "He made some mistakes," I said. "Big ones. He was not ready to be a father then. But he has worked very hard to change. He has been learning how to be a good person. And now he is ready. That is why he is here now." Lucia considered this. "Like you tell me when I make mistakes," she said. "You tell me to try again and do better next time." "Yes," I said. "Exactly like that." She nodded. "Okay," she said. "Then let us go home. I am hungry." And that was it. The wisdom of a 4-year-old. People make mistakes. They try again. They do better. It was so simple when she said it. It had taken me years to understand the same thing. The hardest part was not trusting him again. The hardest part was trusting myself. Trusting my own judgment after being so wrong for so long. Learning to believe that I could see clearly now. That I was not being naive. That the man in front of me was not the man I had married. He was someone new. Someone who had earned his place in our lives one small act of consistency at a time. The crisis came from somewhere I never expected. Not from Roman's past. Not from Alina. Not from anyone trying to threaten us. It came from Lucia's school. She was in kindergarten by then. She loved it. She loved her teacher and her classmates, and the hamster that lived in a cage by the window. She came home every day with stories about who said what, and who shared their snack, and who got in trouble for talking during quiet time. She was happy, thriving, the way a 5-year-old should be. Then one afternoon she came home quiet. She did not want to talk about her day. She did not want a snack. She just wanted to sit on the couch with Muffin and stare at the wall. I knew something was wrong immediately. Lucia was never quiet. Lucia was a constant stream of observations and questions and opinions about everything. Silence from Lucia was like silence from a radio station that had suddenly gone off the air. "What happened?" I asked. I sat down next to her on the couch. She did not answer for a long time. Then she said, "Jacob in my class said that Roman is not my real dad. He said that real dads are there when you are born. He said Roman is a fake dad and I should not call him that." I felt my chest tighten. Jacob was a 5-year-old boy. He did not know what he was saying. He was probably repeating something he had heard at home. But the damage was done. Lucia was hurting, and I did not know how to fix it. "What did you say to Jacob?" I asked. "I told him he was wrong," she said. Her voice was small and uncertain. "I told him Roman is my real dad, because he shows up every day and that is what real dads do. But Jacob said that does not count." I pulled her into my arms. I held her tight. I wanted to tell her that Jacob was wrong, that Roman was her real father in every way that mattered, that biology did not determine family. Love did, showing up did. But I also knew that this was just the first of many questions she would have, the first of many times someone would say something that made her doubt. And I needed Roman to be part of this conversation. I called him that evening. He came over immediately. He sat on the floor in front of the couch where Lucia was still curled up with Muffin. He did not try to fix it or explain it away. He just sat there and waited for her to be ready to talk. "Jacob said you are not my real dad," she said finally. Her voice was muffled against Muffin's fur. Roman was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Jacob is both right and wrong. Can I explain?" Lucia nodded without looking up. "A real dad is someone who loves you and takes care of you and shows up every single day," Roman said. "By that definition, I hope I am your real dad. I try very hard to be. But Jacob is right about one thing. I was not there when you were born. I missed that. I missed a lot of things. And I am very sorry about that. It was my fault, and I carry it every day." Lucia finally looked up at him. "Why were you not there?" Roman looked at me. I nodded. He took a deep breath. "Because I was not a very good person back then," he said. "I made some very big mistakes. I hurt people I cared about, including your mother. I was not ready to be a father. I had a lot of growing up to do. So I went away, and I worked on myself for a long time. And when I was finally ready, I came here. To be with you. To try to be the father you deserve." Lucia studied his face. She was 5 years old, and she was trying to process something that adults struggled with. "Are you a good person now?" she asked. "I am trying to be," Roman said. "Every single day." Lucia was quiet for another long moment. Then she held out Muffin. "Muffin thinks you are a good person," she said. "Muffin is very smart about people." Roman took the cat. His hands were shaking. "Thank you, Muffin," he said. "That means a lot coming from you." The crisis did not end that day. Jacob continued to say things. Other kids started asking questions. Lucia came home confused and upset more than once. But every time, Roman was there. He did not hide from the questions. He did not get angry or defensive. He just answered them honestly and let Lucia decide how she felt. One evening, about a month after this started, Lucia made an announcement at dinner. "I have decided something," she said. "Jacob can say whatever he wants. It does not change anything. Roman is my dad because I said so, and I am the boss of my own family." Mabel, who was at the table with us, raised her coffee mug. "I will drink to that," she said. Roman looked at me. His eyes were wet. I reached across the table and took his hand. We had made it through the first real test. There would be more. There would always be more. But we had faced this one together, and we were still standing. The next challenge came from a different direction. Victor, the man who had found me at the farmer's market, showed up in Mercy Ridge again. This time he was not alone. He had brought someone with him, a man I had never seen before, a man in an expensive suit who did not look like he belonged anywhere near a town of 2,800 people. Roman's old life had found him, and it was not going to let him go without a fight. Victor and the stranger found Roman at the grocery store. I was not there. I heard about it later from Karen, who had been working the register. She said the two men in suits walked in like they owned the place. She said Roman saw them, and his whole body went still, in a way she had never seen before. She said he spoke to them quietly, and then the three of them walked outside together. I found Roman sitting on the steps behind the store an hour later. His head was in his hands. He looked like a man who had just been handed a bill he could not pay. "Who was that?" I asked. "His name is Dominic," Roman said. "He used to work for me. He was my underboss for 12 years. When I walked away from the organization, he took over. He has been running things ever since. What does he want? Roman was quiet for a moment. He wants me to come back. There is a situation. A rival family is moving into our territory. Dominic says he cannot handle it alone. He says the organization needs me. He says if I do not come back, people will die. I felt my blood go cold. I had known this day might come. Roman's past was not something you could just walk away from. It was something that followed you, something that waited, something that showed up at the grocery store on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. What did you tell him? I asked. I told him no, Roman said. His voice was steady, but I could see how much it cost him. I told him I am not that person anymore. I told him I have a family now, a daughter, a life. I told him he would have to find another way. And what did he say? He said he would give me a week to reconsider. He said if I did not come back, he would not be responsible for what happened next. He said there were people who would not understand why I had left, people who might come looking for answers. Roman looked at me. His eyes were full of fear. Not for himself, for us, for Lucia, for Mercy Ridge. I will not let anything happen to you, he said. I will figure this out. I promise. I believed him, but I was also terrified. The most powerful mafia boss in the Northeast had walked away from his empire, and his empire was not ready to let him go. The next week was the longest of my life. Roman met with Dominic twice more. Each time he came back looking more exhausted than before. He was trying to find a solution that did not involve going back to his old life. But Dominic was not interested in solutions. He wanted Roman back. Period. Sheriff Diane got involved. Roman told her everything about his past and his organization and the threat that Dominic represented. Diane listened without judgment. She had already known most of it. She had been waiting for this moment. I cannot protect you from the kind of people Dominic represents, she said honestly. I am a small-town sheriff with 2 deputies. I do not have the resources for that kind of fight. But I can make sure you are not alone. I can make sure the town knows what is happening. I can make sure that if anyone tries to hurt you, they will have to go through all of us first. That was the Mercy Ridge way. We do not turn people away. We do not let them face danger alone. We stand together. Even when the danger is something we cannot possibly defeat. Roman made his decision on the 6th day. He would not go back. He would not become the man he used to be. He would stay in Mercy Ridge and face whatever came. He said he had spent 40 years being part of the problem. He was not going to spend one more day doing that, even if it cost him everything. I was proud of him. I was also terrified. But I knew he was right. Some things were worth risking everything for. Our family was one of them. The confrontation happened on a Friday. Dominic came back with 3 men. They parked outside the grocery store and waited. Roman saw them from the window. He walked outside alone. Sheriff Diane was there within minutes. Gus was there. Frank was there. Old Man Wheeler was there, standing on the sidewalk with his newspaper, looking more alert than anyone had ever seen him. Mabel had locked the cafe and was standing in front of it with a rolling pin in her hand. The whole town had shown up, not to fight. They could not fight men like Dominic. They were there to bear witness, to make it clear that Roman was not alone. Dominic looked at the crowd, at the old woman with the rolling pin and the sheriff with her hand on her holster, and the elderly motel owner who had come straight from his front desk. He looked at Roman. You would really choose this, Dominic said. This town, these people, over everything we built together. I already chose, Roman said. I chose 3 years ago. I am not going back. Dominic stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. He turned and got back in his car. His men followed. They drove away. and that was the last time Roman's past ever threatened our future. The town stood on the sidewalk for a long time after they left. Nobody spoke. Then Mabel lowered her rolling pin and said, "Well, I guess I will go reopen the cafe. Anyone want coffee?" Everyone wanted coffee. We all walked to the Sunrise Cafe together. Roman held my hand the whole way. Lucia was at school. She never knew any of this happened. She never needed to know. All she needed to know was that her father was still here, still showing up, still choosing her, every single day. That evening, after Lucia was asleep, Roman and I sat on the steps outside my apartment. The same steps where we had held hands for the first time. The same steps where so much of our story had unfolded. "You could have gone back," I said. "You could have chosen the easy path." "I know," he said, "but the easy path was never the right one. I learned that from you, from Lucia, from this town. The easy path is what got me into trouble in the first place. The hard path is the one worth walking." I took his hand. We sat there in silence, watching the traffic lights cycle through its colors. The crickets sang, the moon rose. We had survived our first real test. There would be more challenges. There always were, but we had faced them together, and we were still here, still standing, still choosing each other. That was enough. That was everything. Lucia noticed something had changed. She was observant in the way children are, picking up on the tension even though nobody had told her anything. One morning she asked Mabel why everyone had been standing outside the grocery store. Mabel told her that some men had come to town who were not very nice, and the whole town had decided to show them that Mercy Ridge takes care of its own. Lucia nodded seriously. "That is good," she said. "That is what families do." She was 5 years old, and she understood something that had taken Roman 40 years to learn. Family is not biology. Family is not blood. Family is the people who show up when you need them. The people who stand with you when the world turns against you. The people who choose you every single day, even when it is hard. Mercy Ridge was our family, and we were theirs. That was the day I stopped being afraid of Roman's past, because I realized that whatever came, we would face it together. All of us. The waitress, and the former mafia boss, and the old woman with the rolling pin. The sheriff and the motel owner, and the silent man with the harmonica. A town of 2,800 people who had decided that redemption was possible and second chances were worth fighting for. Dominic never came back. Roman's past stayed in the past. The grocery store went back to normal. The cafe went back to normal. Old Man Wheeler went back to reading his newspaper in silence. But something had shifted. We had been tested, and we had passed. Not because we were strong, because we were together. And that made all the difference. The year after Dominic left was quiet. The kind of quiet that felt earned. Roman continued stocking shelves and going to therapy and sitting in the corner booth every morning. Old Man Wheeler continued sharing his newspaper. Mabel continued serving coffee in the World Okayest Dad mug. Lucia continued growing and asking questions, and insisting that sparkly was a color. But something had shifted between Roman and me. The crisis with Dominic had forced us to confront something we had been avoiding. Roman's past was not just a memory. It was a living thing that could reach into our present at any moment. Other people from his old life could show up. Other threats could emerge. If we were going to build a future together, we had to be honest about what that future might include. One evening after Lucia was asleep, I asked Roman to tell me everything. Not the sanitized version he had been offering, the real version, the one that kept him up at night. He was quiet for a long time. Then he started talking. He talked for 3 hours. He told me about things I had never known, crimes I had never suspected, people who had been hurt, people who had disappeared, a world of violence and fear that he had constructed and ruled over for 20 years. He did not make excuses. He did not try to minimize any of it. He just laid it out in front of me like a confession. When he finished, the room was silent. I did not know what to say. The man I had married had done terrible things. The man sitting in front of me now was not that person anymore. But the things he had done still existed. They still mattered. They still had consequences. I need to know something, I said. If someone from your past shows up again, someone who was hurt by what you did, someone who wants revenge, what will you do? Roman looked at me. His eyes were clear. I will not run, he said. I will face whatever comes. I will take responsibility for what I did. I will not hide behind this new life and pretend the old one never happened. That would be another lie. And I am done with lies. I believed him. That was the terrifying part. I believed that he would face whatever came. I believed that he had truly changed. I believed that the man I was falling in love with again was not the man I had married, and that meant I was vulnerable, open, exposed. Everything I had spent 4 years protecting myself from. That night I lay awake for hours. Lucia was asleep in her room. Muffin was curled up at the foot of her bed. The town was quiet. And I was wrestling with the biggest question I had ever faced. Could I love someone who had done terrible things? Not the sanitized version of him, the real version, the one who had built an empire on fear and violence and had only walked away when it was almost too late. I did not have an answer, but I was willing to keep searching for one. The answer came from an unexpected source. Sheriff Diane stopped by the cafe one afternoon when Roman was not there. She sat down at the counter and ordered her usual club sandwich and iced tea. She ate in silence for a few minutes. Then she set down her fork and looked at me. I have been a law enforcement officer for 28 years, she said. I have arrested a lot of bad people. I have testified against a lot of bad people. I believe in justice. I believe in consequences. But I also believe in redemption. I have seen it happen exactly 3 times in my career. Real redemption, not the performative kind. The kind where someone genuinely changes, where they face what they did and spend the rest of their life trying to make amends. She paused. Roman is one of those 3 people. I have been watching him for over a year. I have seen the therapy records. I have seen the letters he wrote to families of people he hurt. Letters he never sent because he did not want to cause them more pain. I have seen the work he has done. The real work. The hard work. He is not faking it. He has changed. Whatever he did in his past, he is not that person anymore. And if you are wondering whether you can love someone with a past like his, the answer is yes, you can. But only if you are willing to accept the whole person. The dark parts and the light parts. The past and the present. The man he was and the man he is trying to become. She picked up her fork and went back to her sandwich. She had said what she came to say. Diane was like that. Direct, honest, uncomfortable in the best possible way. I thought about her words for a long time. Accept the whole person, not just the version I wanted him to be. The real version, the one who had done terrible things and was spending the rest of his life trying to make amends. The one who had been honest with me when it would have been easier to hide. The one who had stayed in Mercy Ridge and faced Dominic instead of running back to his old life. Could I accept that person? Could I love that person? The answer, when it finally came, surprised me. I already did. The realization that I already loved him did not make things simple. It made them more complicated. Loving someone meant being vulnerable. It meant risking everything I had built. It meant trusting that the man who had destroyed our marriage would not destroy it again. But I had been watching him for over a year. I had seen him stock shelves and go to therapy and sit in the corner booth every morning. I had seen him tear up a letter from Alina without opening it. I had seen him face down his former underboss and choose us over his old life. I had seen him answer Lucia's questions with honesty and patience. I had seen him change, not in the way people say they will change and never do, in the way that is real and hard and permanent. I could not keep pretending I did not love him, but I was not ready to tell him yet. Some things needed time. Some things needed to be certain. The weeks passed. Roman kept showing up. Lucia kept growing. The cafe kept serving terrible pancakes and excellent French toast. The rhythms of Mercy Ridge continued, steady and reliable as the sunrise. And somewhere in the middle of all that ordinary life, something extraordinary was happening. We were becoming a family. Not the kind of family that was defined by biology, or wedding rings, or legal documents. The kind that was defined by showing up, every single day, whether it was easy or hard, whether anyone was watching or not. One Saturday afternoon, I watched Roman push Lucia on the swings at the park. She was 5 years old now. Her legs were longer, her sentences more complex, her questions more challenging. Roman was better at the swings now, too. He had been practicing. He no longer pumped his legs awkwardly. He had learned the rhythm, the back and forth, the way to push at just the right moment to make her soar. Higher, she demanded. Higher. He pushed her higher. She screamed with joy. Her hair flew behind her. Muffin watched from the bench where she had been placed for safekeeping. I sat on the same bench, watching them both, and I realized that this was happiness, not the dramatic kind, not the kind that was announced with trumpets and grand gestures, the quiet kind, the sustainable kind, the kind that grew slowly over time, like a tree putting down roots. The kind you did not even notice until one day you looked around and realized you were standing in a forest. I told Roman I loved him that evening. We were sitting on the steps outside my apartment, the same steps where we had held hands for the first time, the same steps where we had survived Dominic and the crisis with Lucia's school. I did not plan to say it. The words just came out. I love you, Roman. I did not think I ever would again. But I do. He did not say anything for a long moment. Then he took my hand. His was trembling. I have loved you since the day I met you, he said. I just forgot how for a very long time. I forgot what love was supposed to be. I thought it was about power, about control, about having someone who belonged to you. I was wrong. Love is about showing up, every single day. Whether you feel like it or not, whether you deserve it or not, whether the person you love loves you back or not, you just show up, and you keep showing up, for as long as it takes. I leaned my head against his shoulder. The traffic light cycled from red to green. The crickets sang. The moon rose. We sat there in silence, holding hands, two people who had been broken and rebuilt, choosing each other one more time. We did not rush into anything. We had learned that lesson the hard way. The first time we got married, we had been young and impulsive and blind to each other's flaws. This time, we were older and wiser and painfully aware of exactly who we were. We knew Roman weaknesses and my fears and all the ways things could go wrong. And we chose each other anyway, not because we were perfect, because we were not, because we had seen the worst of each other and decided that the best was worth fighting for. Roman moved out of the apartment above the hardware store and into my apartment above the grocery store. Frank was sad to lose his best tenant, but understood. He said he had seen it coming for months. He said everyone in town had seen it coming. That was the thing about Mercy Ridge. Everyone knew everything about everyone, but nobody judged. They just watched and waited. and were happy when things worked out. Lucia was thrilled. She had been asking for months when Roman was going to live with us. She did not understand the adult complications of the situation. She just knew that her father was going to be there when she woke up in the morning and when she went to bed at night. That was all that mattered to her. She was 5 years old, and she understood something that had taken me 35 years to learn. Love is simple. It is people who make it complicated. The transition was not seamless. Roman and I had to learn how to live together again. We had been apart for 4 years. We had both changed. We had to figure out new routines and new boundaries and new ways of resolving conflicts. We argued about small things. Dishes in the sink, whose turn it was to take out the trash, what temperature to set the thermostat, all the ordinary annoyances of sharing a life with someone. But we argued differently than we used to. We did not scream or slam doors or give each other the silent treatment. We talked. We compromised. It was exhausting and frustrating and absolutely worth it. Mabel said we were disgusting. She said it with affection. She said we reminded her of her and her husband when they were first married. She said the honeymoon phase would pass, and we would go back to being normal, annoying people. I told her I hoped she was wrong. I liked the honeymoon phase. I wanted it to last forever. She rolled her eyes and refilled my coffee. Mabel was like that, gruff and kind in equal measure. Lucia turned 6. We had a party at the cafe. Mabel closed for the afternoon. She had been closing for Lucia parties since she turned 1. She said it was tradition and she was not going to break tradition. Gus brought balloons. Old Man Wheeler attended. He did not speak, but he did leave a small wrapped gift on the table. It was a harmonica, just like the one he played. Lucia was thrilled. She did not know how to play it. The noise was terrible. Old Man Wheeler almost smiled. The whole town came. Frank and Karen and Sheriff Diane and Tess and everyone else who had become our family. Roman was there. He was always there now. And this time, for the first time, he was sitting at the table with us. Not across the room, not in the corner, at the table, with his family. After the party, after the cake was eaten and the presents were opened, and Lucia had fallen asleep with Muffin under one arm and the harmonica under the other, Roman and I sat on the porch. Our porch now. The porch of the apartment we shared above the grocery store. "Thank you," he said, "for today, for every day, for giving me a chance I did not deserve." "You did deserve it," I said, "not because of who you were, because of who you became, because of the work you did, because you showed up every single day, even when it was hard, even when you did not know if it would ever be enough. You showed up anyway. That is what made you deserve it." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I want to marry you again, not the way we did before. That wedding was built on secrets and lies. I want to marry you as the person I am now, the person I have become, the person who loves you and Lucia more than anything in this world. Will you marry me?" I looked at this man who had destroyed our marriage and then spent 4 years rebuilding it. This man who had stocked shelves and gone to therapy and faced down his own past. This man who had learned to be a father one small act of consistency at a time. "Yes," I said, "I will marry you. But there are conditions. Anything. No big wedding, no expensive rings, no pretending to be people we are not. Just us, and Lucia, and the people who matter. In Mercy Ridge, the town that took us both in when we needed a place to heal." He nodded. "Whatever you want, whatever conditions, I accept them all." We sat there on the porch, making plans, until the moon rose and Lucia woke up asking for water. It was not a fairy tale. It was better. It was ours. That night, Roman had a nightmare. I woke up to him thrashing beside me, his breathing ragged, his face twisted in fear. I shook him awake. He sat up, gasping, his skin slick with sweat. It took him a full minute to remember where he was. I dreamed about one of them, he said. His voice was hoarse. A man I hurt, a long time ago. He was standing at the foot of our bed. He was just looking at me, not saying anything, just looking. I held him until his breathing slowed. I did not ask who the man was. I did not need to know. What I needed to know was that Roman was still carrying the weight of everything he had done. He would always carry it. That was part of the price of redemption. You do not get to just move on. The past stays with you. It visits you in your sleep. It stands at the foot of your bed and stares at you in silence. The question is what you do when you wake up. Do you let it paralyze you? Or do you get up and keep trying to be better? Roman got up. He went to work. He stocked shelves. He sat in the corner booth. He pushed Lucia on the swings. He kept showing up, even with the ghosts standing at the foot of the bed. A week later, a woman showed up at the cafe. She was not from Mercy Ridge. I could tell immediately. She had the look of someone who had traveled a long way for a specific purpose. She sat at the counter and ordered coffee. She did not look at the menu. She did not make small talk. She just sat there, waiting. When Roman walked in for his morning coffee, she stood up. "You do not know me," she said, "but you knew my brother. His name was Anthony. He worked for you for 6 years. He died because of an order you gave. I have been waiting 15 years to face you." The cafe went silent. Mabel's hand moved toward the phone. Sheriff Diane, who happened to be there, put her hand on her holster. Roman looked at the woman for a long moment. Then he said, "What was his middle name?" The woman looked surprised. "Joseph," she said. "Anthony Joseph. He was 3 years older than me. He used to let me beat him at checkers when we were kids. I know he let me win. I never told him I knew." Roman nodded slowly. He sat down across from her. "Tell me about him," he said. "Tell me everything." And for the next hour, Roman Conti sat in a diner in a town of 2,800 people and listened to a stranger tell him about the brother she had lost because of him. He did not defend himself. He did not make excuses. He just listened. When she finished, he said, "I am sorry. I know those words do not bring him back. I know they do not fix anything. But I am sorry, and I am trying, every single day, to be someone who would never give that order again." The woman looked at him for a long time. Then she stood up. "I do not forgive you," she said. "I do not think I ever will. But I believe that you are sorry. That is more than I expected when I woke up this morning." She walked out of the cafe and never came back. That night, Roman sat on the porch alone. I found him there after Lucia was asleep. He was staring at nothing. His hands were in his lap. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. "She was right," he said. "Her brother died because of me. Not directly. I did not pull the trigger, but I gave the order. And a man named Anthony Joseph who let his little sister beat him at checkers is dead because of it. There are others, dozens of others. People whose names I do not know but whose families carry the same pain. I cannot undo any of it. I can only try to be different now." I sat down next to him. "You are different now," I said. "That is all you can do. Keep being different. Keep showing up. Keep trying, even when the ghosts come, even when the past stands at the foot of your bed, even when the families show up at the cafe. Keep being different. It is the only thing that matters." He took my hand. We sat there in the dark, two people who had both been broken and rebuilt, choosing to keep going. Not because it was easy, because it was right. The next morning, Roman went to work at the grocery store as usual. He stocked shelves. He helped an elderly woman carry her bags to her car. He smiled at a child who was crying because her mother would not buy her candy. He did all the ordinary things that ordinary people do every day, and I realized that this was the answer to the question that had been haunting both of us. How do you atone for something that can never be undone? You do not, you cannot, but you can spend every day of the rest of your life being kind, being present, being someone who would never do those things again. That is not enough to balance the scales. Nothing is enough, but it is something, and something is better than nothing. Roman had learned that. It had taken him 40 years and the loss of everything he loved, but he had learned it, and he was living it. Every single day, the woman who came to the cafe changed something in me. I could not stop thinking about her brother Anthony Joseph who let her beat him at checkers, about the 15 years she had waited to face the man responsible for his death, about the way she had said she did not forgive Roman, and probably never would, about the way Roman had not defended himself, had not made excuses, had just listened. I admired him for that. I also feared what it meant. Loving Roman meant accepting his past, not just knowing about it in the abstract, accepting it, living with it, knowing that there were people out there who would always hate him, people whose lives he had destroyed, people who might show up at any moment, like Anthony's sister had, demanding answers, demanding accountability, demanding something that could never truly be given. I lay awake that night while Roman slept beside me. His nightmare had not returned. His breathing was steady and peaceful. The man who had once commanded an empire was sleeping soundly in a small apartment above a grocery store in a town of 2,800 people. He had found peace, or at least a version of it, but I was not sure I had. The question that kept circling in my mind was this: could I live with his past? Not just tolerate it, not just look the other way, actually live with it, build a future with it, raise a daughter with it, wake up every morning next to a man who had done unforgivable things. Could I do that? Was I strong enough? Was I willing enough? I did not have an answer, and the not knowing was starting to eat at me from the inside. The next few days I was distant. I did not mean to be. It just happened. I would be washing dishes and suddenly I would be back in that cafe, watching Anthony's sister face, hearing her voice say she had waited 15 years for that moment. I would be helping Lucia with her homework, and I would wonder if there were children out there who had lost their fathers because of Roman. Children who had grown up without someone to help them with their homework or push them on the swings. Roman noticed. Of course he noticed. He had become attuned to my moods over the past year. He knew when I was pulling away. He knew the signs. He had learned them the hard way, through trial and error, through the long months when I could barely look at him. "You are thinking about the woman," he said one evening after Lucia was asleep. It was not a question. He knew. "Yes," I said. "I cannot stop thinking about her." He nodded. "I understand. If you have questions, I will answer them. If you need time, I will give it to you. If you have decided that you cannot do this anymore, I will accept that too. Whatever you need, Sera. Whatever you decide." His willingness to let me go was almost harder than if he had fought for me to stay. He was not trying to hold on to me. He was trying to give me the freedom to choose. That was how much he had changed. The old Roman would have demanded, threatened, used every tool at his disposal to keep me. This Roman just opened his hands and let me decide. I did not know what to say, so I said nothing. I just nodded and went to bed. We lay side by side in the dark, not touching. The distance between us felt like miles. The distance grew over the following days. I did not mean for it to happen. I was not consciously deciding to pull away. It was more like my body was reacting before my mind could stop it. I stopped sitting with Roman on the porch after Lucia went to bed. I stopped reaching for his hand when we walked through town. I stopped looking at him across the breakfast table. I would answer his questions with one-word responses. I would find reasons to be busy when he was home. I was building walls again. The same walls I had built after I left him 4 years ago. The same walls that had taken years to let down. They went back up so easily it frightened me, like they had never really been gone, like they had been waiting just beneath the surface, ready to rise up the moment I felt threatened again. Roman noticed immediately. He had become an expert at reading my silences over the past year. He knew the difference between a comfortable silence and a dangerous one. This was dangerous. He did not push. He did not demand explanations. He just gave me space and waited. That was what the new Roman did. The old Roman would have cornered me and demanded to know what was wrong. The new Roman just let me be distant and hoped I would come back on my own. Lucia noticed too. She was 6 years old and she was more perceptive than most adults I knew. She came into the kitchen one afternoon while I was washing dishes and stood there with her hands on her hips in a pose she had definitely learned from Mabel. "Why are you being mean to Roman?" she asked. I stopped washing. "I am not being mean," I said. "You are being quiet mean," she said. "That is worse than loud mean. Loud mean you can yell back at. Quiet mean just sits there making everyone sad and nobody knows what to do about it." I stared at her. She was 6. Where had she learned to articulate things like that? "I am just thinking about some things," I said. "Grown-up things." "Well, stop thinking about them," she said. "Thinking is making you sad. And when you are sad, Roman is sad. And when Roman is sad, Muffin is sad. And nobody wants Muffin to be sad." She marched out of the kitchen before I could respond. She had made her case. The prosecution rested. That night, I sat on the porch alone. Roman came out after a while and sat down next to me. He did not speak. He just sat there, a few inches away, not touching me, waiting to see if I would let him in. We sat like that for a long time. 2 people who had been through so much together, suddenly strangers again. The traffic lights cycled, the crickets sang. The distance between us was only a few inches, but it felt like the Grand Canyon. Roman finally broke the silence on the 4th night. We were sitting on the porch again, the same ritual we had fallen into. Him waiting, me hiding. The distance between us had become a physical thing, a third presence on the porch that neither of us knew how to address. "I need to know what is happening," he said quietly. His voice was not demanding. It was tired, worn down. The voice of a man who had been patient for a very long time and was running out of patience. Not with me, with the not knowing. "I do not know how to answer that," I said. "Then tell me what you do know. Tell me what changed. Tell me what I can do. Tell me anything. Just do not shut me out." We promised we would not shut each other out. He was right. We had promised that. After the Dominic crisis, after the therapy sessions, after all the hard conversations we had endured together, we had promised to be honest with each other, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. "The woman," I said finally, "Anthony's sister. I cannot stop thinking about her brother, about all the other people out there whose lives you destroyed. I keep wondering if I can live with that, if I can build a life with someone who has done the things you have done. I keep wondering if loving you makes me complicit in all of it." Roman was silent for a long time. The traffic lights cycled from red to green and back again. The crickets continued their nightly symphony. The moon had risen now, casting long shadows across the porch. "I understand," he said finally. His voice was steady, but I could hear the pain underneath it. "I have asked myself the same question 1,000 times, whether anyone should love me after what I did, whether I deserve to be loved. The answer I always come back to is that I do not deserve it. But I want you. I want Lucia. I want this life. And I am trying, every single day, to be someone who is worthy of it. If that is not enough for you, I understand. If you need to leave, I will not stop you. But I need to know. I cannot keep living in this in-between space, not knowing whether you are staying or going. I looked at him. This man who had once commanded an empire. This man who had done terrible things. This man who had spent 4 years trying to become someone different. He was not asking for my forgiveness. He was not asking for my approval. He was just asking for a decision. Stay or go. In or out. He could not keep living in the middle. Neither could I. Lucia came into our room that night after she was supposed to be asleep. She was carrying Muffin and wearing her pajamas with the stars on them, and her expression was serious in the way that 6-year-olds get when they have been thinking about something important. I cannot sleep, she announced. I have been having thoughts. I pulled back the covers and she climbed into bed between us. Roman shifted to make room for her. This had become a familiar arrangement over the past year. Lucia climbing into our bed when she could not sleep. Muffin tucked between us. The 4 of us in the dark. What kind of thoughts? I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Are you and Roman going to get a divorce?" The word hung in the air. Divorce. She had learned it somewhere. School, maybe. Or television, or one of the many books she now read on her own. She knew what it meant. She knew it meant parents not living together anymore. She knew it meant something broken that could not be fixed. "Why would you ask that?" Roman said. His voice was careful, controlled, the way it got when he was trying very hard not to show how much something was affecting him. "Because you have been sad," she said. "Both of you. You do not laugh anymore. You do not sit together on the porch. You do not hold hands when we walk to the park. Jacob at school said that when parents stop holding hands, it means they are getting a divorce. Jacob knows a lot about divorces because his parents got one last year." I felt my heart crack open. Jacob, the same boy who had told Lucia that Roman was not her real dad. He was still causing trouble, even from a distance. "We are not getting a divorce," I said. "We are just working through some things. Grown-up things. Sometimes grown-ups have to work through hard things and it takes time. But it does not mean we are getting a divorce." Lucia considered this. She looked at Roman. She looked at me. She looked at Muffin as if seeking the cat's opinion on the matter. "Promise," she said. "Promise you are not getting a divorce." "I promise," I said. Roman said it at the same time. Lucia nodded once. She seemed satisfied. She snuggled down between us, Muffin under her chin. "Good," she said, "because if you got a divorce, I would have to choose who to live with, and I do not want to choose. I want both of you." She fell asleep within minutes. Her breathing became slow and steady. Muffin purred softly. Roman and I lay there in the dark, our daughter between us, the promise we had just made hanging in the air. We had told her we were not getting a divorce. Now we had to figure out how to make that true. The next morning, I went to see Mabel. I needed someone who would tell me the truth without sugarcoating it. Mabel had been telling people the truth without sugarcoating it for 50 years. She was the best at it. I found her in the cafe kitchen, prepping for the lunch rush. She took one look at my face and turned off the stove. "Sit down," she said. "I will make us coffee." That is how I knew it was serious. Mabel never turned off the stove during prep. I told her everything. About Anthony's sister. About the distance that had grown between Roman and me. About Lucia asking if we were getting a divorce. About the promise I had made without knowing if I could keep it. Mabel listened without interrupting. She poured us both coffee and sat down across from me. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I am going to tell you something that you are not going to like." You have spent the past 4 years building a life without Roman. You built it because you had to, because he gave you no choice. And you did a remarkable job. You built a business. You raised a daughter. You found a community. You became someone strong and independent and whole. That version of you does not need Roman. She does not need anyone. She paused. She took a sip of her coffee. But the version of you that exists now is not the same person. The version of you that exists now has spent a year watching Roman change, watching him earn his way back, watching him become someone worth loving. That version of you does not need Roman either, but she wants him. There is a difference between needing someone and wanting someone. Needing someone is weakness. Wanting someone is strength. It means you are whole on your own, and you are choosing to share your life with someone else because they make it better. Not because you cannot survive without them, because you can, but you would rather not. I stared at her. How do you always know exactly what to say? She shrugged. 50 years of practice. Now finish your coffee and go figure out what you want. And stop being quiet mean to Roman. Lucia is right. It is the worst kind of mean. I found Sheriff Diane at the post office. She was checking her mailbox, which she did every day at exactly 11 a.m. Diane was a creature of habit. You could set your watch by her routine. Can I ask you something? I said. As a law enforcement officer, not as a friend. Diane closed her mailbox and turned to face me. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes were sharp. She had been waiting for this conversation. I could tell. Go ahead, she said. How do you reconcile knowing what Roman did with letting him live here? How do you square your oath to uphold the law with allowing a man who has done terrible things to walk free? Diane was quiet for a moment. She leaned against the wall of the post office and crossed her arms. I have been a sheriff for 28 years, she said. In that time, I have arrested people for everything from petty theft to murder. I have testified in court. I have put people away. I believe in consequences. I believe that people who do bad things should face justice. She paused. But I also believe in redemption. Not the cheap kind. Not the performative kind where someone says they are sorry and expects everything to be forgiven. The real kind. The kind where someone genuinely changes, where they face what they did and spend the rest of their life trying to make amends, where they never make excuses and never stop trying to be better. That kind of redemption is rare. I have seen it exactly 3 times in 28 years. Roman is one of those 3. She looked at me directly. The law exists to protect society and to punish wrongdoing. It does not exist to deny people the chance to change. If Roman had stayed in his old life, continuing to do harm, I would have done everything in my power to stop him. But he did not stay. He walked away. He chose differently. He is still choosing differently every single day. That matters. It matters to me. It should matter to you. I nodded slowly. Thank you, I said. Diane pushed herself off the wall. You are welcome. Now if you will excuse me, I have to go make sure nobody is parked illegally in front of the grocery store. Ted from the hardware store has been leaving his truck in the loading zone again. I have warned him 3 times. This time I am writing a ticket. She walked away, her hand resting on her holster in a way that was probably not necessary for a parking violation, but was very Diane. That night, after Lucia was asleep, I sat on the porch alone. Roman was inside, giving me space. He had become very good at giving me space. Too good. I almost wished he would fight for me. Demand an answer, force the issue. But that was the old Roman. The new Roman waited. The new Roman let me come to him on my own terms. It was infuriating and admirable in equal measure. I thought about what Mabel had said, needing someone versus wanting someone. I did not need Roman. I had proven that over 4 years of building a life without him, I could survive on my own. I could raise Lucia on my own. I could run my business on my own. I was whole without him, but I did not want to be without him. That was the truth I had been avoiding. I wanted him here. I wanted him on this porch with me. I wanted his hand in mine when we walked through town. I wanted his voice reading bedtime stories to Lucia. I wanted his presence in our home and his smile across the breakfast table and his terrible singing in the shower. I wanted all of it. Not because I needed it, because my life was better with him in it. The question was whether I could accept the whole package. The man he was now and the man he used to be. The good and the terrible. The redemption and the guilt. Mabel said wanting someone was strength. Diane said redemption was real. Lucia had said quiet mean was the worst kind of mean. All three of them were right, and all three of them were telling me the same thing in different ways. Choose. Stop living in the middle. Stop being quiet mean. Decide what you want and commit to it. I stayed on the porch until the moon was high overhead. The traffic lights cycled through its colors. Green, yellow, red, green again. It never stopped. It just kept going, over and over, reliable and predictable. That was what I wanted for my life. Not excitement, not drama, not the chaos of Roman old world. Just this, a porch and a traffic light and the crickets singing. A daughter sleeping peacefully inside. A man who had changed everything about himself to be worthy of us. A town that had accepted us both without judgment. I wanted all of it. I wanted him. I had made my choice. I went inside. Roman was sitting on the couch, reading one of Lucia's books. He looked up when I came in. His expression was guarded but hopeful. He had been waiting for this moment. He had been waiting for a long time. "I am ready to talk," I said. Roman set down the book. He did not speak. He just waited. His hands were resting on his knees and I could see them trembling slightly. The most powerful mafia boss the Northeast had ever known was sitting on a second-hand couch in an apartment above a grocery store, terrified of what I was about to say. I sat down across from him. Not next to him, across from him. This was not a conversation for sitting side by side. This was a conversation that required facing each other directly. "I have been thinking about the woman who came to the cafe," I said. "Anthony's sister. I have been thinking about what you did to her brother, and what that means about who you are. I have been thinking about whether I can love someone with your past, whether I can build a life with someone who has done unforgivable things, whether staying with you makes me complicit in everything you did before I knew you." Roman did not look away. He did not defend himself. He just listened. "I have also been thinking about the man you are now," I continued. "The man who stocks shelves at a grocery store. The man who goes to therapy twice a week. The man who sat in a corner booth for a year just to be near his daughter. The man who tore up a letter from Alina without opening it. The man who faced down Dominic and chose us over his old life. The man who sat in a diner and listened to Anthony's sister for an hour without making a single excuse for himself. The man who reads bedtime stories and pushes Lucia on the swings and burns spaghetti and never stops trying to be better." I paused. Roman's hands were still trembling. His eyes were wet, but he was not crying. He was holding himself together through sheer force of will. "Those two men are the same person," I said. "The man who did terrible things, and the man who is trying to be better. I cannot separate them. I cannot love one and reject the other. I have to accept the whole person or none of him. That is what Mabel told me. That is what Diane told me. That is what I have spent the past week trying to figure out." I reached across the space between us and took his hands. They were cold and shaking. "I have decided," I said. "I accept the whole person, the past and the present, the terrible things and the good ones. The man you were and the man you have become. I accept all of it. Not because it is easy, because it is hard. Because loving someone who has done unforgivable things and then spent years trying to atone for them is the hardest thing I have ever done. But I am choosing to do it anyway. Not because I need you, because I want you, because my life is better with you in it. Roman did not speak for a long moment. When he finally did, his voice was barely a whisper. I do not deserve you, he said. I know, I said, but I am choosing you anyway. That is what love is. Choosing someone even when they do not deserve it, even when it is hard, even when the whole world tells you to walk away. You choose them anyway. You show up. Every single day. That is what you taught me. That is what I am giving back to you. Roman broke then. The tears he had been holding back finally came. He did not try to hide them. He just let them fall. I held his hands and let him cry. We sat there in our small living room above the grocery store, the traffic light casting red and green shadows through the window. Two people who had been broken in different ways and had chosen to put each other back together. When Roman finally spoke, his voice was raw. He had been crying for several minutes. The kind of crying that comes from a place so deep you did not know it existed until it broke open. I had never seen him cry like that. Not when he first found me in Mercy Ridge. Not when he met Lucia for the first time. Not even when he faced Dominic and chose us over his old life. This was different. This was the cry of a man who had spent his entire life believing he was unworthy of love and had just been told he was wrong. I have something I need to tell you, he said. His voice was hoarse. Something I should have told you a long time ago. I waited. When I first started therapy with Dr. Patel, he said, she asked me to write down the worst thing I had ever done. Not the thing I was most ashamed of. The thing that kept me up at night. The thing I had never told anyone. I wrote down your name. I felt my breath catch in my throat. I wrote that the worst thing I had ever done was destroy your trust. Not the crimes, not the violence, not any of the things I did as the head of the organization. The worst thing I had ever done was make the person who loved me most believe she could not trust anyone ever again. I wrote that if I could undo one thing in my entire life, it would not be any of the terrible things I ordered or authorized. It would be the look on your face when you walked into my office and found me with Alina. I have seen a lot of terrible things. I have caused a lot of terrible things. Nothing has ever haunted me the way your face haunted me. Nothing. He stopped. His hands were gripping mine so tightly it almost hurt. I did not pull away. I have spent 4 years trying to become someone who would never cause that look on anyone's face again, he said. I know I cannot undo what I did. I know I cannot give you back the years I stole. But I can promise you this. I will never stop trying to be worthy of what you just gave me. Your trust, your love, your choice. I will earn it every single day for the rest of my life. Not because I have to, because I want to, because you are worth it, because Lucia is worth it, because this life we have built is worth more than anything I ever had before. I leaned forward and kissed him. It was the first time I had kissed him voluntarily in 4 years. The first time it was not hesitant or uncertain, or loaded with the weight of everything that had happened. It was just a kiss, a simple, ordinary kiss between two people who had chosen each other against all odds. When we pulled apart, he was smiling. It was the first real smile I had seen on his face in weeks, maybe months. It made him look younger. It made him look like the man I had fallen in love with all those years ago, before the secrets and the lies and the parking lot and the 47 minutes. Before everything fell apart and had to be rebuilt from the ground up. I love you, I said. I did not think I would ever say those words to you again, but I do. I love you, Roman Conti, the man you are now. Not the man you used to be. I love you too, he said. Sera Bianchi, the woman who taught me what love is supposed to be. The next morning, Lucia woke up and immediately knew something had changed. She came into the kitchen where Roman and I were making breakfast together, something we had not done in weeks. I was flipping pancakes. Roman was burning the bacon, which was apparently the only way he knew how to cook bacon. We were laughing about it, actually laughing. You are not quiet mean anymore, Lucia observed. She climbed onto her chair and surveyed the scene with the critical eye of a 6-year-old detective. You are being loud nice now. That is the best kind of nice. Loud nice, I said. Is that a technical term? Yes, Lucia said. I invented it. It means you are nice and everyone can tell. Quiet mean is when you are mean but trying to hide it. Loud nice is when you are nice and not hiding anything. Roman looked at me over the pan of burning bacon. She is going to be a lawyer, he said. Or a philosopher, I said. Or both, Lucia said. I can be both. I am very smart. We sat down to breakfast together. The pancakes were slightly burned on one side. The bacon was significantly burned on all sides. The orange juice was warm because someone had left it out of the refrigerator. None of it mattered. We were together. We were laughing. We were loud nice. After breakfast, Roman and I walked Lucia to school together. We held hands the whole way. Lucia ran ahead, chasing a butterfly, muffin tucked under her arm. The morning was cool and crisp. The sky was a perfect blue. The town was waking up around us. Mabel saw us from the window of the cafe as we passed. She raised her coffee mug in a salute. I waved back. She would want details later. I would give them to her. She had earned them. Sheriff Diane was parked in her usual spot outside the post office. She tipped her hat as we walked by. I nodded. She had helped me see things clearly. I would thank her properly later. Old Man Wheeler was sitting on the bench outside the library, reading his newspaper. He looked up as we passed and gave the smallest nod, barely perceptible. It was the most acknowledgement he had given anyone in 30 years. Roman nodded back. We dropped Lucia at school. She kissed us both goodbye and ran off to join her friends without a backward glance. She was 6 years old, and the world was full of possibilities, and her parents were loud nice again, and that was all that mattered. Roman and I walked back through town hand in hand, the same streets we had walked 100 times before, but this time it felt different, lighter, like a weight had been lifted. We had faced the hardest question of our relationship, and we had found an answer. Not an easy answer, not a perfect answer, but an answer we could both live with, an answer we could both build on. The wall was down, permanently this time. I could feel it. The space between us that had felt like the Grand Canyon was gone. In its place was just us, two people who had been through the worst and come out the other side, two people who had chosen each other. Not once, twice, the second time with more knowledge and more scars and more certainty than the first. What happens now? Roman asked as we reached the steps of our apartment. Now we keep going, I said. We keep showing up, every single day, whether it is easy or hard. We keep choosing each other. He smiled. That is a plan I can follow, he said. We went inside. The dishes from breakfast were still in the sink. The laundry needed to be done. The grocery list needed to be written. There was a stack of orders for Lucia Kitchen that needed to be filled. All the ordinary tasks of an ordinary life. But after everything we had been through, ordinary felt extraordinary. Ordinary felt like a gift. We got married on a Saturday in June, 2 years after Roman first walked into the Sunrise Cafe. The morning dawned clear and warm, the sky a perfect shade of blue that seemed chosen specifically for the occasion. Mabel later claimed she had arranged it. She said she had connections in high places. When I asked what that meant, she said she had prayed very specifically and very loudly. I woke up before the sun, lying in bed and watching the light slowly fill the room. Roman was still asleep beside me, his breathing slow and steady. He looked peaceful. He looked like a man who had finally found what he had been searching for his entire life. I watched him for a long time, memorizing the lines of his face, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the small smile that played at the corners of his mouth even in sleep. This was the man I was marrying today. Not the man I had married 7 years ago. That man was gone. This was someone new, someone who had been through fire and come out the other side, someone who had earned every small happiness he now possessed. Lucia burst through the door at exactly 6:03 a.m. She had set an alarm. She had never set an alarm in her life. She was taking her role as flower girl very seriously. "It is my wedding day," she announced, jumping onto the bed and landing directly on Roman's stomach. He woke with a grunt and a laugh and pulled her into a hug. "It is our wedding day," I corrected, "but you are the most important person in it." "I know," she said. "That is why I set an alarm." She was wearing her pajamas with the stars on them. Her hair was a mess. Muffin was tucked under her arm, looking increasingly worse for wear but still very much loved. She was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. "What happens first?" she asked. "What is the schedule?" "I need to know the schedule." "First we eat breakfast," I said. "Then Mabel is coming over to help me get ready. Then we go to the park. Then you walk down the aisle and throw flower petals. Then Roman and I get married. Then we eat cake." Lucia nodded seriously. She seemed to approve of the schedule. "What kind of cake?" she asked. "Lemon," I said, "with strawberry jam between the layers. Tess has been working on it for weeks." Lucia considered this. "Acceptable," she said. She climbed off the bed and marched toward the kitchen. "I will make the toast," she announced over her shoulder. "I have been practicing." Roman looked at me. "Toast," he said. "She has been practicing toast. She is 6, I said. "She takes breakfast very seriously." We got out of bed and followed our daughter into the kitchen. The morning light was golden through the window. The coffee was brewing. The traffic light outside cycled through its colors. It was an ordinary morning in every way except one. Today we were getting married. Today we were becoming a family in the eyes of the world. Today everything changed and nothing changed, all at once. Mabel arrived at 8 a.m. sharp. She was wearing a purple dress that Lucia had chosen for her. Lucia had insisted they match. Mabel had not argued. She had also brought a bag of supplies that she claimed were essential for wedding preparation. The bag contained a hairbrush, a tube of lipstick that had probably been purchased during the Nixon administration, and a small flask of what she called emergency provisions. "The flask is for me," she clarified. "Not for you. You need to be sober for this. I need to be slightly less sober. It is the only way I will get through giving you away without crying." "You are giving me away," I said. I had not realized she was planning to do that. "Well, someone has to," she said. "Your father is not here. Your mother is not here. I am the closest thing you have to family in this town. Unless you want Gus to do it. He would probably cry more than me." I hugged her. I could not help it. Mabel stiffened for a moment, then relaxed and hugged me back. She was not a hugger. She had told me this many times over the years, but she made an exception for weddings. She said it was in the rule book. She helped me into my dress. It was simple, white, no train, no veil, just a dress that I had found at a shop in the next town over. It was not expensive, it was not designer. It was just beautiful in the way that simple things are beautiful when they are chosen with love. "You look perfect," Mabel said. Her voice was gruff, but her eyes were wet. She had been claiming allergies all morning. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was not the woman who had fled the city 5 years ago. That woman had been broken and terrified and pregnant and alone. This woman was whole. She was strong. She was loved. She had built a life and a business and a family from nothing. She had survived the worst thing that had ever happened to her and come out the other side. "You know what I see," Mabel said, standing behind me in the mirror. "I see a woman who sat in a parking lot for 47 minutes and watched her life fall apart, and then got out of the car and built a new one, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. I see the strongest person I have ever known, and I have known a lot of people in 50 years of running that cafe. You are the strongest." I turned around and hugged her again. She let me this time without complaining. She even hugged me back. It was a wedding miracle. "All right," she said, pulling away and wiping her eyes. "Enough of that. We have a wedding to get to, and I need to make sure Gus has not messed up the decorations. He means well, but his taste is questionable. He wanted to use balloons. Balloons. At a wedding. I told him absolutely not." She marched out of the apartment, already listing all the things she needed to check on. I watched her go. She was right about one thing. I had built this life, brick by brick, choice by choice. And today I was adding the final brick, the one that made everything complete. The park had been transformed. Gus had spent 3 weeks building the archway where Roman and I would stand. It was covered in climbing roses from Frank's garden and morning glories that Tess had grown from seeds. The white chairs were arranged in perfect rows, borrowed from the community center and Patricia Library and the church basement. Each chair had a small bundle of wildflowers tied to it with ribbon. Tess had stayed up until 2 a.m. tying those ribbons. She said it was worth the lost sleep. She said she wanted everything to be perfect. Mason jars filled with sunflowers lined the aisle. Frank had been growing those sunflowers specifically for this wedding for 6 months. He had been very secretive about it. Every time I asked him what he was growing in the back corner of his garden, he would just smile and say it was a surprise. Frank did not smile often. The fact that he was smiling about sunflowers told me everything I needed to know about how seriously he was taking this. The morning sun was warm but not hot. A slight breeze moved through the park, rustling the leaves of the old oak tree that stood at the center. It was the same tree Lucia had climbed last summer and gotten stuck in. Sheriff Diane had to climb up and rescue her. Lucia had not been scared at all. She had been annoyed that the rescue took so long, because she was missing her favorite television show. Diane had said it was the most unusual call she had responded to in 28 years of law enforcement. Guests began arriving around 10 a.m. Frank and Karen came together. Frank in his best flannel shirt and Karen in a floral dress she had been saving for a special occasion. She had bought it 3 years ago and never found an occasion worthy enough. She said this was the one. Tess arrived with the cake in a covered box, her face a mixture of pride and anxiety. She had refused to let anyone else carry it. She said she had not spent weeks perfecting the lemon curd just to let someone drop it on the sidewalk. Sheriff Diane came in her full uniform, badge polished to a gleaming shine. She had already written 1 parking ticket. Ted from the hardware store had tried to park on the grass. Diane had informed him that the grass was not a parking space, and never had been. Ted had apologized profusely. Diane had written the ticket anyway. She said rules were rules, even on wedding days. Patricia from the library arrived with a gift-wrapped book. She had chosen it specifically for Lucia. It was about a girl who becomes an astronaut. Patricia said she had been saving it for the right moment. She had been the librarian for 40 years, and she knew exactly which book belonged with which person. She said it was her gift and her curse. I told her it was definitely a gift. Old Man Wheeler took his seat in the front row. He was wearing his suit, the one that smelled faintly of mothballs. He had polished his harmonica to a shine. He had been practicing for weeks in secret. Everyone knew he had been practicing, even though nobody had heard him. That was the Mercy Ridge way. You knew things without being told. You just paid attention. He looked up at me as I passed and gave a small nod, not a smile. Old Man Wheeler did not smile, but the nod was enough. It was his way of saying he was proud of me, of saying he was glad he had lived long enough to see this day. He had been coming to the Sunrise Cafe every morning for 30 years, and in all that time he had never said more than a handful of words to anyone. But he was here, in his suit, with his harmonica. That said more than words ever could. Mabel helped me adjust my dress one final time. Her hands were steady, but her eyes kept watering. "Allergies," she said. "I have told you. It is allergies." I did not argue. I just hugged her one more time. She let me. She had given up pretending she was not emotional about this wedding. She had been crying on and off all morning. She claimed it was allergies, but she had stopped putting any real effort into the lie. "You have been the mother I lost," I told her. "You took me in when I was pregnant and terrified and alone. You gave me a job and a home and a family. You loved Lucia like she was your own granddaughter. You taught me how to be strong without being hard, how to be kind without being weak, how to keep going even when everything felt impossible. I would not be here without you." Mabel waved her hand dismissively. "You would have figured it out on your own," she said. "You are the strongest person I have ever met. I just gave you a place to do the figuring." "That is not true," I said. "You gave me so much more than that. You gave me belief. You believed in me before I believed in myself. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." Mabel's eyes filled with tears, real tears this time. She did not bother blaming allergies. "You are going to make me ruin my makeup," she said. And I spent a full 3 minutes on this makeup. I am not a woman who spends time on makeup. This is a very special occasion. Lucia appeared at my side, her flower girl basket clutched in both hands. She had been practicing her walk for weeks. She had made me time her with a stopwatch. She had determined that the optimal speed was somewhere between a walk and a skip. She had also determined that the optimal pedal distribution technique involved throwing them directly upward so they would rain down around her. She had tested this theory extensively in the living room. There were still flower petals under the couch. Roman was waiting at the archway. He was not facing the aisle yet. He was facing Gus, who was giving him what appeared to be a very serious pep talk. I could not hear what Gus was saying, but I could see Roman nodding along, his expression grave. Later, Gus told me he had been advising Roman on the secrets of a successful marriage. Gus had been married for exactly 18 months in the 1970s, before his wife left him for a musician. But he said that was not the point. The point was that he had learned things. Roman said the advice was surprisingly useful. The music started. Old Man Wheeler raised his harmonica to his lips and began to play. It was not a traditional wedding song. It was an old folk tune that nobody recognized except maybe Old Man Wheeler himself. But it was beautiful, simple and sweet, and slightly melancholy in the way that harmonica music always is. Later, people would say it was the most perfect wedding music they had ever heard. Old Man Wheeler would not acknowledge the compliments. He would just nod and put his harmonica back in his pocket. Lucia went first. She walked down the aisle at exactly the speed she had practiced, somewhere between a walk and a skip. She threw flower petals directly upward so they rained down around her. The effect was magnificent. Several people gasped. Lucia did not acknowledge the gasps. She was focused. She was a professional. When she reached the archway, she turned and gave me a thumbs up. I gave her one back. Mabel walked me down the aisle. Her arm was linked through mine. Her grip was firm. She was not crying anymore. She had composed herself. She was in full Mabel mode now. Competent, steady, unshakable. She delivered me to Roman like she was delivering a particularly important shipment. "Take care of her," she said to him. Her voice was gruff, but her eyes were soft. "Or I will make your life very difficult. I know where you live. I know where you work. I know how you take your coffee. Do not test me." Roman nodded solemnly. "I would not dream of it, Mabel." Mabel nodded once, satisfied, and took her seat in the front row next to Old Man Wheeler. She immediately pulled out a handkerchief. "Allergies," she muttered. Nobody believed her. The ceremony was short. Roman and I had agreed that we did not need long vows. We had already said everything that needed to be said over months of hard conversations. What mattered now was the promises. The simple, clear promises that we intended to keep. "I promise to show up," Roman said, "every single day, whether it is easy or hard, whether I feel like it or not. I promise to be present. I promise to be honest. I promise to never stop trying to be the man you deserve. I promise to choose you," I said, "every single day. Not because I need you, because I want you, because my life is better with you in it. I promise to accept the whole person you are, the past and the present, the scars and the healing, all of it." Roman then knelt down in front of Lucia. He had asked her permission to do this part. She had granted it after careful consideration. "Lucia," he said, "I was not there when you were born. I missed your first steps and your first words and so many moments I can never get back. That was my fault and my loss, and I carry it every day. But I am here now, and I make this promise to you. I will be here for every moment you let me. I will show up at your recitals and your games and your parent-teacher conferences. I will help you with your homework and teach you to drive and embarrass you in front of your friends. I will be the father you deserve. Not because I have a right to be, because you let me. Because you chose to let me in. Thank you for that. I will never stop being grateful." Lucia had prepared a response. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her flower girl basket. She had been working on it for weeks. She had asked Mabel to help her with the spelling, but had insisted on writing every word herself. "I have decided that you can be my dad," she read. Her voice was clear and confident. "You were not here before, but you are here now. That is what matters." Muffin agrees. Everyone laughed. Lucia continued, "I love you. You make good pancakes even though they are sometimes burned. You read the best bedtime stories. You let me win at checkers even though I know you are letting me win. I am glad you are my dad." She folded the paper and put it back in her basket. Then she hugged him. Roman held his daughter and wept. The entire park was crying. Even Old Man Wheeler dabbed at his eyes, though he would deny it later. Even Sheriff Diane, who had seen everything in 28 years of law enforcement, had to look away for a moment. The reception was held at the Sunrise Cafe. Mabel had closed for the entire day, the second full-day closure in the cafe 100-year history. The first had been for Lucia's first birthday. Mabel said she was starting to make a habit of closing for important occasions and might never open again at this rate. Nobody believed her. Tess cake was a masterpiece. 3 tiers. Lemon cake with layers of my mother's strawberry jam between each tier. The frosting was perfect. The decorations were perfect. Tess stood next to it the entire reception, beaming with pride, daring anyone to cut into it, and also desperately wanting someone to cut into it so people could taste what she had made. Gus gave a toast. He had written it on index cards that he kept losing and finding in the wrong order. The toast was slightly disjointed but deeply heartfelt. He talked about the first time I walked into his motel, pregnant and terrified and alone. He talked about watching Roman arrive in Mercy Ridge, broken and desperate and trying to change. He talked about watching us find our way back to each other. He said it had been the greatest privilege of his life to witness it. Then he lost his index cards and had to ad-lib the ending. The ad-lib was better than the prepared version. Mabel gave a toast. She said she had been waiting for this day for 5 years. She said she had known Roman was different the first time he walked into her cafe, even though she had refused to serve him for 2 months out of principle. She said she was glad she eventually gave in. She said Roman was the only person who had ever appreciated her terrible pancakes. Roman raised his glass and said the pancakes were not terrible. Mabel said that was exactly the kind of lie that made a good husband. Everyone laughed and cheered. We danced under the string lights that Gus had hung from the cafe ceiling. Old Man Wheeler played his harmonica. Sheriff Diane danced with Frank. Karen danced with Patricia. Tess danced with the cake. Lucia danced with Roman, standing on his feet the way she had when she was 3. She was too big for it now, but neither of them cared. Mabel watched from the counter, her coffee mug in hand, her eyes wet. She had given up blaming allergies hours ago. That was 2 years ago. Lucia is 8 now. She is in 3rd grade. She wants to be a veterinarian and an astronaut and a professional cake taster, all at the same time. She says she can do all 3 because she is very smart and very good at managing her time. I believe her entirely. She still has Muffin the cat, who is now missing 1 eye and most of her fur and has been through the washing machine twice by accident. Muffin does not seem to mind. She just keeps purring. Lucia Kitchen is in 14 stores across the region now. I hired 3 more employees. Tess is my production manager and my right hand. She is 21 years old and more competent than most people twice her age. She says she learned everything from me. I tell her she learned everything from herself. She says we can both be right. She is probably correct about that too. Roman still stocks shelves at the grocery store. He says it is the most honest work he has ever done. He still goes to therapy twice a month, not because he needs it the way he used to, but because he wants to keep growing. He says growth is not a destination. It is a practice, a discipline, something you choose every day. Mabel still runs the Sunrise Cafe. She says she will retire when she is 100 and not a day sooner. The French toast is still excellent. The pancakes are still terrible. Nothing has changed and everything has changed. I still work a few shifts a week, not because I need the money, but because I need the people. The regulars who have become family. Old Man Wheeler, who still comes in every morning at 6:15 and still shares his newspaper with Roman, and still never speaks unless absolutely necessary. Sheriff Diane, who still comes every Tuesday for lunch and still tips 25%. Gus, who still comes every evening for dinner and still tells the same stories about Nashville in the 1970s that everyone has heard a dozen times but nobody minds hearing again. I think about the parking lot sometimes, the 47 minutes, the shadows through the window, the woman I used to be. She was so certain her life was over. She could not see past the pain. She could not imagine a future where any of this was possible. If I could go back and tell her anything, I would tell her to keep going. The best parts of her life have not happened yet. The people who will become her family are waiting in a town she has never heard of. The man who broke her heart will spend years putting it back together. Her daughter is going to be extraordinary, and she is going to be happy, not the fragile kind of happy that depends on someone else. The strong kind, the kind you build yourself, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. I am Sera Bianchi. I am also Sera Conti. Both names belong to me now. I am the mother of Lucia and the founder of Lucia Kitchen. I am a waitress and an entrepreneur and a wife and a survivor. I am a woman who sat in a parking lot for 47 minutes and watched her life fall apart. A woman who spent 5 years rebuilding it from the ground up, with nothing but stubbornness and the kindness of strangers who became family. I am a woman who learned that forgiveness is not a single act. It is a daily choice. A choice you make every morning when you wake up. A choice to let go of the anger so it does not consume you from the inside. A choice to believe that people can change. Because they can. I have seen it happen. I am living proof. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Drop your city in the comments, and tell me where you are watching from. Tell me what the weather is like outside your window. Tell me how you are doing today. I read every single comment. I want to know you are out there. New stories every single day. See you in the next one.